Well, hello there. Thank you for joining me for this week's edition of Telile 24/7. I'm your host, Adam Cook, and we have a busy show for you this week. Later on, I'll speak to the first declared candidate for Nova Scotia's provincial NDP leadership race, veteran MLA Claudia Chender. I'll also talk to local salon owner Ashley Taylor about why recent supports announced by the province for the cosmetology industry are still going to leave Taylor and many of her fellow salon owners and hair care specialists out in the cold. This week we also speak to Nova Scotia's Community Services Minister, Karla MacFarlane, about how Port Hawkesbury is taking part in a province-wide effort to deal with the homeless situation. But we begin with a recap of a recent issue that came up for Richmond Municipal Council at the municipality's latest Committee of the Whole meeting. The Kingston Memorial Health Centre in Lordways is once again seeking municipal assistance to try to deal with a doctor shortfall at the Lordways Clinic. That happened just a year ago, and Richmond County contributed $3,000 in emergency funding to help with the situation. This time around, the Kingston Health Centre is looking at support from all three levels of government, and they're also wondering if that support can happen any month of the fiscal year in which there happens to be a budget shortfall. To help put things in perspective, let's take a look at the recent section of that Committee of the Whole meeting that dealt with this issue. We begin with some words from the board chair for the Kingston Health Clinic, Juanita Mumbercat.
We are back to our financial challenges. So as we told you last year, at that time, we were operating with only one physician and we were eating into our maintenance budget, our save it for a rainy day budget. And since then, we did get a physician, which was great. We operated for a bunch of months with in a much better financial situation. However, as you all know, our second physician, our first physician, has now left to pursue other things in life. So we are back down to one physician, which means we're back to every month. Pretty much, we're running a deficit, and we're eating into our maintenance reserve fund. And we don't have a big maintenance reserve fund, so it's a little distressing. As well, of course, COVID has impacted our ability to retain people, recruit them to our location, and that's across the board, I think. And in 2021, our rental income only covered 63% of our operating costs. We wanted to let you know what some of the things that we've done or are considering doing. We have been working very hard to reduce our annual deficit, and we were doing really well. We had hit a couple of months where we were like black, and it was very exciting. And we had hopes for continuing in that manner, but then we had the physician recruitment challenges, so that's kind of thrown us away. But we had been making excellent progress. We've installed solar panels and we've done the LED lighting refit. We are considering increasing rent, but that's a tricky conversation. We are always looking for other healthcare providers or professions that are complementary to healthcare that might rent our space. We are actively working with Nova Scotia Health and Cape Breton South Recruiting for Health to help recruit a physician area. We've had a bunch of meetings with NSH this year to explore what we might be able to do. So we're looking at many different ways of trying to solve this problem. So one of the ways that we're trying to solve this problem is to ask Richmond County for emergency funding. And what we're looking for is funding to cover our deficit. We don't want it forever. We just want it in the months where we can't cover our operating costs because of this, because we don't have a second physician. And we would like to have your support, until we find a permanent solution, because month to month, it's a crisis that we are working very hard to solve, but we're looking for your help.
I am kind of wondering, Juanita, where have the talks landed with provincial government or any kind of federal communication on this? Are you making similar requests for support?
Yeah, so we've been having a series of meetings with Nova Scotia Health. And so we had a meeting, I think, before Christmas, and then there was one just in the early January, and some follow-up emails. And we've recently sent them a description of our situation and what we might get from them. And we've I sent the way we started this process off was that I sent the Premier and the Minister of Health, the CEO of Nova Scotia Health. I went to as top as I could and sent them a please help us email, and it got some traction, it got some attention. So we had a meeting with the CEO and of Nova Scotia Health and a vice president from the Department of Health and Wellness, and then those are the people that we had sort of the follow-on meetings with, and who we are sending more information regarding our situation to. And I think the most recent action was us sending them some information. And I believe we sent that email back to them last week. As well, I have an email from one of our questions that we asked during those meetings, those series of meetings, was, while we're looking for a physician, it would be nice if we can attract locums to be able to attract them until we get a physician. But as we understand it at the moment, you can only get, I forget how many days, it's like weeks, like 3 or 4 or 6, I don't know how many, but a very limited period of time to cover vacation for a physician, but not an indefinite period until we replace a physician. So we brought that up as could you change your locum rules so we can get support until we get a physician, if we can even find locum physicians who want to come to our area. So I've received an email just late last week from someone I forget if she's from DHW or NSH, who is responsible for locum processes. So I have to give her a call and see where we go from there. So that's an ongoing process, and we have reached out to the federal government, and we haven't found a way to get funding from the federal government yet. But Mike Kellaway and his staff we've talked to them a bunch of times, and they are also looking for opportunities for funding from the federal side. So that's kind of where we are with that.
I was just looking at some sort of time frame, Juanita, where you were looking for some emergency funding.
Well, I wish I knew. Starting anytime now, and hopefully we'll get a physician or a long-term solution. But every month not every month, but unless we're getting a big HST rebate or something, we are basically running a deficit. So the months that we run deficits is kind of what we're looking for. But hopefully we, through all those other methods, get a long-term solution. But this is emergency.
As many folks will recall, the last time this happened, I think we did provide for, 1 month of relief to help with your efforts. It was coming in at the end of the fiscal year, as I recall. It's certainly not typical of municipal council to provide any kind of operational funding period to any organization. It's, we have a grant program to fund specific projects, but I think at the same time recognizing that a critical piece of our medical infrastructure and health infrastructure is at risk in the county. It's really concerning, and I think we all share your distress. But I think I'm not sure that we would have enough information today to make a decision on that. So I'm kind of wondering, is there additional information you could provide when thinking financial, some financial records. If I don't know, it's probably too soon that you may not have your year end done to the end of last year, but aside from financial records, like specific amount per month that you're looking at, just I guess some additional information to help us determine with you what exactly what the shape of this emergency is right now.
We can figure out what information might be useful to you. And yeah, absolutely, we can share.
So I would just say, like I did last year at this time when we chatted, providing that information. I think connecting with our CFO is the best option to see, to provide him with the information that he needs to make some type of determination in terms of reasonableness.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Is maybe ask Juanita for you and Sherry and your team to work with our CFO Jason to kind of assemble some additional financial information, and then he can kind of then brief council and we can make a determination from there. Does that sound doable?
Sure. Yeah, for sure.
So if the time frame allows, could we kind of re-engage in this conversation maybe at our regular council meeting in 2 weeks' time? Just, whereas if they're in contact with the CFO, we can find out a little bit more information, then we don't want to let this drag on too long.
Yeah, I agree.
Sure.
That'd be great.
So could I look for a motion from councillors then to instruct staff to work with the Kingston Health Centre team to assemble financial information and provide a briefing, I guess, on it in time for our February 28th council meeting?
I'll make a motion to that effect.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Brent Sampson. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Sean Sampson. Okay, any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed? Okay, that motion is carried.
Like Richmond County, the neighbouring town of Port Hawkesbury has put affordable housing at the top of its agenda in recent months. And the town is now going to be taking part in a special province-wide initiative launched by the Community Services Department to be able to provide temporary shelter, including hotel rooms, to those who are having trouble finding a permanent place to lay their heads. I spoke to the Community Services Minister for Nova Scotia, Karla MacFarlane, about the program and about Port Hawkesbury's involvement. Joining us now on Telile 24/7 is the Minister of Community Services for Nova Scotia. She is Pictou West MLA, Karla MacFarlane. Minister MacFarlane, thank you for joining us on Telile 24/7 today.
Thank you so very much for having me. Pleased to be here.
Well, we have you here because of an announcement that you and your department made a little earlier on, and that's specifically about addressing homelessness, not just in one or two parts of Nova Scotia, but all the way around the province. We'll get to the specifics in just a moment, especially in terms of the impact on communities here in the Strait of Canso. But first, can you tell me in your own words exactly what the money is going for that's been committed and why the decision was made to go with this funding at this time?
Well, there's a lot of factors involved as to why we decide on what service providers are in need for funding. What we have witnessed since the pandemic especially is that there has been a high demand of help in shelters across the province. I mean, we often hear about the need in HRM, but homelessness is a provincial issue. A lot of times it's not as visible in rural areas. And after listening and learning and collaborating with many of the service providers across this province, we saw that the demand was much higher. And we certainly wanted to reach out with them and collaborate and provide funding to them so that they could provide the appropriate wraparound services they may need in continuing to provide a safe place. Everyone deserves a safe place to have shelter and warmth and food.
So let's talk a little bit about what's being pledged here. Now, I'm understanding that $20,000 is being pledged from the provincial government to 8 different parts of the province. One of them, of course, is Cape Breton Island. But this money is being put towards providing safe spaces, including hotel rooms, for those that are struggling to find permanent homes. Can you tell us a little bit about what exactly the strategy is here and what was the thinking behind it?
So because of the pandemic, especially, and because of the protocols that are in place with public health, what we're hearing from many of our service providers that provide shelter is that they would have to make sure that the proper 6 feet apart and just ensuring that all particular health protocols related to the pandemic were being applied. So often what they found is that they were having too many people in their location. So they would have to reach out and put some people up in hotels. And it's not the ideal situation, but it certainly does provide a safe space and warmth for those that are experiencing homelessness. But the other reason that shelters are often seeking out hotels is because they may have individuals as well that are finding themselves perhaps in situations with mental health and addictions, that they may be best on their own as well and not in a shelter at the moment for their own safety and of course safety of others. Could be that we have individuals that are on income assistance but can no longer afford to pay rent. So they seek shelter. And again, because of the high demand right now of homeless individuals, a lot of our service providers are using hotels as a coping mechanism through these difficult times.
Now, I want to speak a little bit, Minister MacFarlane, about the locations that were chosen to receive this funding. And in particular, we want to concentrate on the Cape Breton locations. The Cape Breton Community Housing Association is receiving $20,000 as part of the program announced earlier today. And I note that Sydney and Port Hawkesbury were listed as the key communities that are falling under that particular organization in terms of where the funding will go. Can you give us a sense on why Port Hawkesbury and Sydney were such an important part in terms of being able to have that kind of funding in place to be able to provide these kind of services?
Basically, through the Department of Community Services, individuals that work there were very well made aware of the increase of homeless individuals in the area. We know that Nova Scotia has an affordable housing crisis. So there's a lot of individuals right now that are housing insecure. Even some individuals in those areas that you speak of are individuals that are working but cannot afford to even, pay rent. So after going through and collaborating and listening to basically different service providers across the province, we sat down and it was really based on a need. And these are some of the service providers that just basically showed us that they have a high demand right now and they need the extra help. A lot of people don't think that, living in rural areas, there would be such a homeless crisis, but there is. And a lot of people in rural areas, again, it's not as visible. What people tend to do is they're couch surfing, or maybe they're, staying in a trailer down at the beach or the cottage or something with no heat. And so it's not as visible as perhaps in the HRM area. So definitely people at DCS reached out because we knew our numbers were high. The by name list in Nova Scotia indicates that there's approximately 900 to 1,000 individuals in Nova Scotia that are homeless. Now, we do know that number 480 some, I believe, are in the HRM area, but the rest are spread out through Nova Scotia. And it's extremely important to me to make sure we are reaching everyone from Yarmouth right to, Sydney, Cape North. To make sure that people know that they can access shelter. So we're trying to make sure we reach out to everyone.
You mentioned affordable housing just a moment ago, and I did want to ask you about that, partly because that has risen to the top of municipal agendas here in the Strait of Canso. Port Hawkesbury completed an affordable housing survey just this past spring, and they're speaking with developers who could be setting up affordable housing units in the town in the coming weeks and months. Richmond County just embarking on its own affordable housing survey next door to Port Hawkesbury. So I just wonder if you could speak for a moment on how this all comes together in terms of being able to not only assist the homeless population, but possibly encourage others to be able to take the bull by the horns at the municipal and provincial levels in terms of affordable housing for all.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm really glad you brought that up because poverty and homelessness, it really depends on all levels of government to come forth and work collaboratively and collectively together to solve this. And I'm really pleased to hear that municipalities are looking into their own area and seeing where there needs to be, if they have a affordable housing situation, or we've seen the market here in Nova Scotia increase. I'm from Pictou area, and it just seems like a house goes on the market, and within an hour, it's gone. So we're, as a government, definitely setting parameters for municipalities to start providing us data so that we can look at that data and determine where do we build affordable housing. I'm starting to call it attainable housing, really. How do we provide attainable housing for individuals? And I just actually earlier today, had an opportunity to have a meeting with Minister Lohr of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and how we can work together to leverage money from the federal government as well, and work with our municipalities to help create and generate that data so that when we do make those investments, we know exactly where those investments are, why they're being made. So that information you mentioned about is very crucial. And I am pleased that our government in their fall under Minister Lohr, there was an announcement of over 35 million made to start investing in developing affordable housing. And he certainly would be able to answer more questions on the housing situation, but we're quite aware of how linked my department and responsibility of homelessness is to housing. And so it's been great to start forming that partnership with him, because we know we have to do it together.
It's interesting to hear that you've had that conversation with Minister Lohr just a few hours ago. We actually had him as a guest on Telile 24/7 just a couple of months ago talking about affordable housing needs. Where do we go from here, Minister MacFarlane? Obviously, the homelessness issue does not magically disappear because your department made a commitment to various parts of the province in terms of funding. What will happen from here on in terms of being able to work this problem out and to be able to address it more specifically in different parts of the province and in the Strait area as well?
Well, I look at the whole province as being equal, and making sure that I get out to those areas and speak to those service providers and collaborating with them and understanding the needs again. What we are doing is through the Department of Community Services, we have to look at building those relationships intersectionally with other departments within the province, because I need to be working with education. I need to be working with health. And we know that a lot of individuals that find themselves homeless are struggling with mental health and addictions. So making sure that I am working with Minister Comer with mental health and addictions to ensure that there's services provided through his department, making sure that individuals who find themselves working but can't afford rent. So it's a collaboration of working together. I can promise Nova Scotians that this is always going to be on my radar. This is not a quick fix, but we certainly are making some steps forward. I would say positive steps forward, and collaborating with each department will make it something that we can do together to hopefully speed it up. But again, homelessness is top of my radar, and providing funding for those shelters that do a wonderful job in providing wraparound services is crucial right now. now. And I will continue that relationship, and knowing that those wraparound services are being provided to individuals who are seeking maybe help just to write a resume. Right. So there's a lot of services that are provided when we fund these service providers. It's not just providing them a place to sleep, but providing other wraparound services.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing where the conversation goes on all of these in the days and weeks to come. And we've covered a lot of ground here, Minister MacFarlane, as I expected we might in just a short time. Did you want to add anything else about this just before we wrap up?
Well, just to thank you for having me. And if anyone finds themselves homeless, or if there's an individual out there that thinks there's someone that is homeless, to reach our department, and we will immediately do a wellness check and make sure if they're if someone needs help, we're there to help. Our services are voluntary, but at the same time, we want to make sure that everyone is pitching in to solve this way of living. It's just no way that anyone should be living homeless.
Thank you very much, Minister MacFarlane, for joining us on Telile 24/7 today.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Karla MacFarlane is the Minister of Community Services for Nova Scotia. We've been speaking to her from her office in her constituency of Pictou West. Stay tuned for more of Telile 24/7 in just a moment. Coming up later on Telile 24/7, I'll speak with Port Hawkesbury salon owner Ashley Taylor about how recent provincial supports for the cosmetology industry are still leaving her and her fellow salon owners struggling as they try to deal with the latest stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. But now we're going to shift our focus back to provincial politics and take a look at the New Democratic Party's new leadership race. They're trying to replace Gary Burrell, who led the NDP for the previous two provincial elections, but announced in the fall that he would be stepping down from his leadership post. Well, there's a new candidate who is the first to declare her intention to seek the top job for the NDP. She's the veteran MLA for Dartmouth South. Her name is Claudia Chender, and she agreed to speak to Telile 24/7 and tell us about her vision for the NDP. Here's that interview with Claudia Chender right now. And we're pleased to welcome to Telile 24/7 today the MLA for Dartmouth South and the first declared candidate for Nova Scotia's NDP leadership. She is Claudia Chender. Claudia, thank you for joining me on Telile 24/7 today.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you, and we have wanted to speak to you since you made your announcement that you were going to run for the NDP leadership provincially. Now, you've been the MLA since 2017 for Dartmouth South. You ran under Gary Burrell twice in two different elections, re-elected just this past summer. So what made you feel that now was the right time for you to take a crack at the full party leadership?
Well, I mean, I think to start with, the leadership is open. So Gary has decided that he won't be reoffering and, has spoken, I think, quite eloquently about the need for renewal in our party, that, we've done some heavy lifting in terms of rebuilding over the last few years. And I think now is the time for leadership renewal and to really get back across the province, talking to folks in different communities about, the challenges that they are facing and how the NDP can be helpful to them. And so I think when Gary made that announcement, I was really humbled to be encouraged by a lot of folks to run. I took my time. I have a small family, a young family of small people, I should say. And so, it's a difficult decision, but I care about this province. I believe that our party has a lot to offer at this moment. And I'm excited about the opportunity to really spend a lot of time outside HRM talking to folks like yourself in different communities about what we can offer and what those challenges are.
Now, I am curious that not only did you make your announcement just last week, but you also made it knowing that you had the support of several members of the NDP caucus, and those that weren't outwardly supporting you were all saying essentially, we're not going to run, we're not going to challenge Claudia Chender. So it looks like there's a lot of unanimity among the MLAs that you have with you sitting in Province House right now. So how does it feel to know that you have that kind of support going into this race?
Well, I think it would have been hard to run without it. So as I said, I think I'm really buoyed by the fact that I have a really great team of people who are supporting me. And in any leadership race, in any organization, it's never one person, it's always a team. And we've very much always worked that way. And so I was really thrilled to have the support of Susan LeBlanc, who I've worked with for 5 years, and Lisa Lachance. And I have been really happy at the support I've received. But that being said, you know, the deadline for our leadership race isn't until May.
True.
We have a lower financial threshold than some of the other parties, which I think is a positive thing. So if people want to put their name forward, they can. And so we anticipate that that may happen. And to that, I say, great. You know, we live in a democracy. We're lucky to live in a democracy, and I look forward to, you know, debating ideas. But certainly having that support made coming out into this race a much more exciting thing for me.
You've been asked a couple of times now by other members of the media about whether you hope to steer the party further to the right or at least to the center, as the only person to win election in Nova Scotia for the party, Darrell Dexter, has done in 2009. And you've had questions to that effect, and your response seems to be, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, you don't want to dwell on past records of previous NDP governments or leaders. You want to try to put your own stamp on the party. Can you elaborate on that a little bit and tell me a little bit about the discussion that's going to happen over the course of this leadership campaign about where the party will go in the future?
Yeah, I mean, well, we have been having that conversation, and I think really my emphasis and my desires are all forward-looking. I think we have to meet the moment we're in now, and the reality is, in Nova Scotia, we're in a pretty topsy-turvy political world. You know, I think we had a Liberal government for a long time that was not particularly liberal or progressive. We have a Conservative government that is trying to distinguish itself from the Conservatives federally, and so I think increasingly these kind of labels of left and right and center are number one, not that accurate, and number two, not that useful. And I think what Nova Scotians are smart people, and I think what they want is leadership that they can trust, that they feel like listens and can fix and meet the challenges and the problems that they're facing. That's certainly what we've always tried to do, and what we will continue to try to do.
I do wonder, as well as we're talking about what direction the party will go in the future, we have seen over the course of the past decade that the NDP has had some trouble regaining the ground that it had in rural Nova Scotia. It always seems to have a bit of a beachhead in the Halifax areas and in the Sydney area. But it was in 2009, a lot of people in rural Nova Scotia voted for the NDP for the first time, and that gave Darrell Dexter his majority. But it seems like that hasn't been the case in the last 2 provincial elections, and arguably the last 3 when the Dexter government lost power. So what do you hope to do to be able to regain the trust of rural Nova Scotians and to be able to build the caucus back up towards government again?
Well, listen, to start with, you know, I think I've been very clear that my desire to enter this leadership race is to chart a path back to government. We're very aware of the challenges. Absolutely. I think you're right. We've been a pretty urban centric caucus in the last 6 years, and it's time to grow beyond that. And I think that to do that, we need to get out of HRM. We need to be in conversation with communities. We know that, you know, every community in Nova Scotia is different, but we're small. There's a million people. And so I think that we can reasonably, unlike many other places, actually engage with communities right across this province, and find really good answers through community members and leadership to a lot of the questions that are facing people. And I think when it comes right down to it, a lot of the issues we're facing are the same. You know, people are just trying to make it and trying to live a good life. And there's barriers to that. There's ways that can be supported. And we need to figure out what that is to the different people in different communities across the province. And that's certainly what we intend to do. And I have every confidence that we will be able to do that, because I think it comes down to who people trust and who people, you know, think are going to, stand up for them. And I think we want to be those people. I certainly want to be that champion for people right across this province. And I'm going to spend the next few months in conversation.
Now, what will the campaign look like for you over the next few months as you try to have those conversations with Nova Scotians? We are, of course, still neck deep in the COVID-19 pandemic. The numbers are not looking all that promising for Nova Scotia, and yet restrictions have been limited, and you have a little more freedom to be able to get out than you might have even just a couple of weeks ago. What is the Claudia Chender leadership campaign going to look like in terms of making that reach out around the province to connect with people in their own communities?
Yeah, I'll give you a kind of a non-politician answer to that, which is
Okay.
I don't really know. But what I do know is that I will physically be doing my best to travel across the province. But what those conversations look like, I think just like everyone else in this province, we're sort of tracking what's going on with public health, and we'll try to connect with people in as safe a manner as possible. And so my guess is it'll be a hybrid. So we'll talk to people on Zoom, we'll talk to people in real life. If gathering limits permit and the weather gets warmer, we'll try to get some groups of people together. But certainly we'll be guided by a respect for people's health and comfort. And so luckily technology has caught up so that we can meet with people in all different kinds of ways. And that's what we intend to do.
Can you talk a little bit about your constituency and how you feel your service to the people of Dartmouth South has made you the person who you are today, and the premier that you could become should you be given the opportunity to lead the party in the next election?
Sure. I mean, I think Dartmouth South is such an amazing constituency, and everyone says that, but I say that all the time. We're very diverse. We have a downtown, but we're sort of a little a town in a city. So we have our own main street and our own downtown, but of course we've got Halifax right across the harbor. But we have our own version of everything Halifax has, and we like it that way. And we have lots of families. We have lots of seniors. We have lots of seniors housing. So we have lots of infrastructure here. We have the Dartmouth General Hospital. And my approach has really been, because we are urban and we have a lot of organizations and folks on the ground doing really good work, is to just find those people and support them. So, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. And I really think that's true of government generally. And so I think our office has really figured out a good way of just being in community and seeing all the good things that flow from that. So the more people we can be connected to and talk to and be in relationship with, the more we can help people when they need help. So of course, in any MLA office, we've got a line out the door. In Richmond County, there's more road work than we get here. But we've got our provincial issues too. But we're also really lucky to be in relationship with so many social service providers. People apply for income assistance and housing right here. There's all kinds of that work going on, and so many people, just like every community right across the province, doing amazing work. And so a lot of our focus has been to support those folks in doing that work. And then where there are big problems, where we need people to come together to try to convene people around those conversations. So, we're a city of lakes. But there's no one who's taking responsibility for that lake. So one of the things my office has done, and in partnership with Susan LeBlanc, my colleague, is bring people into conversation about what do those mean to our community and how do we protect them. And we bring all levels of government together and all the canoe clubs and folks. So I think that is an approach that we can scale and replicate at a provincial level, which is to just find out how are communities helping themselves and how can we help them to do that? Who are the people and organizations that are respected and responsive, and how can we help them to do their work?
Someone else who knew the value of being a Halifax area politician, but being able to take their experience and be able to project it across Nova Scotia was, of course, the first female leader of the NDP, Alexa McDonough, who just passed away earlier this winter. And I just wonder if you could speak a little bit about her legacy for the NDP and how you hope to carry that legacy on should you be able to become the leader of the NDP later on this spring.
Well, I mean, as I said on the day she died, Alexa was just a giant, and I was lucky to know her. Lucky to have my life impacted by her. Our paths crossed several times, but first, when I was in high school and she came to speak to my class, there's so much about Alexa's legacy. But one of the things that Megan Leslie spoke about after she died was the number of places that Alexa was present in really shifting the way that our government works and supports people. That nobody knew about, but everyone knew that they could call Alexa and that they would get a responsive ear. And that particularly where there was injustice, so economic injustice or social injustice, that Alexa would show up and she would be there, and that it wasn't about accolades or anything like that, but it was about being on the right side. And I think that that really set a path, or continued a path really, for our party. And I think, that is one of the things at the heart of the New Democratic Party, is that, yes, we want to get back to government, but we want to get back to it by actually helping people and actually building a good government that responds to people's needs, not just through political posturing. And we're a newer party, so we know that other parties have all kinds of very sophisticated machinery that is designed to win. And winning is important, but doing the right thing is as important. And so we intend to do both of those things. And I think that's always what Alexa stood for as a politician, was doing the right thing, and being honest and true, and always putting Nova Scotians first. So if I can carry on her legacy, it would be to follow that path, because I think it was endlessly impressive. And you've seen, as in the wake of her passing, the number of people whose lives she impacted.
Very much so. And I'll wrap things up here, Claudia, with a bit of an offshoot from that angle of the discussion, because I was intrigued that one of the very first people to congratulate you shortly after you announced that you were running for the provincial NDP leadership was the Liberal MLA for Preston, Angela Simmons, who is running for the leadership of her party. And it is quite interesting to think that we could be seeing, as the dust settles late spring, early summer, two women running two of Nova Scotia's three biggest political parties. So your thoughts on the idea of getting that kind of cross-party support, and also being able to promote gender diversity in politics as we head towards the finish line for these leadership races?
Yeah, well, to both of those, I would say, I think the fact that you could see two women running a party, and the fact that they would congratulate each other, I think it's about time. I think politics can be a cutthroat business, but in the end, I think if we are doing this work to help people and to benefit our province, then we should absolutely support everyone who's doing that. And we can disagree about policy, but that disagreement does not have to be personal. And it's about time that we see two women running political parties. I think, there's been more MLAs named John than women in the Legislative Assembly. And that is, kind of funny and kind of depressing, but the reality is we have a long way to go. And I think it's about time. So I think it's refreshing that we have a more diverse field. I think we have a long way to go in terms of diversity in the Legislative Assembly, but we're making strides, and I think that's a really positive thing.
That's a good point you make, by the way, because I recall that last summer in the riding of Glace Bay Dominion, all three candidates for the major parties were named John. So that helps drive your point home for sure. We've covered a lot of ground in just a short time, Claudia Chender, and I do appreciate that you've given us so much in such a short time. Did you want to add anything else about all of this just before we wrap up here?
No, I appreciate you taking the time, and I'll certainly take you up on another visit when we're out your way. So thanks so much.
The door will be open and the TV will be on at Telile Community Television when you make your way up here. So thank you again. Claudia Chender is the MLA for Dartmouth South, and she is running for the provincial leadership of the New Democratic Party here in Nova Scotia. Stay tuned, because later on in the program, we'll play Telile 24/7's Fast Five game with NDP leadership candidate Claudia Chender. But right now, we want to shift our focus on the economic situation caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, and how recent shutdowns and restrictions have impacted the salon industry, particularly here in the Strait area. Last week, Nova Scotia's Department of Economic Development announced a new support program as part of the Sector Impact Program for the cosmetology industry as a whole. However, one salon owner who's been fighting for changes in terms of these supports still feels that her industry in particular isn't getting the help that it needs. Her name is Ashley Taylor. We've had her on Telile 24/7 before to talk about these problems, and we decided to catch up with her again in light of the announcement from the Provincial Economic Development Department. Here's that conversation with Ashley Taylor right now. And we're pleased to welcome back to Telile 24/7 Ashley Taylor. She is the owner and operator of Cutting Edge Studio and Boutique at the Port Hawkesbury Shopping Centre. Ashley, thank you for joining me once again today.
Thanks, Adam.
It's good to talk to you, and it's helpful to have you here because we want to make some clarifications on all of this as much as anything else. So the Provincial Department of Economic Development announced supports for people within the cosmetology industry and people part of the Cosmetology Association of Nova Scotia, but there's a bit of a catch here. Can you explain exactly what happens in terms of people like yourself who are salon owners in terms of the supports that were announced this morning?
Okay, so I definitely think that it is a win, a partial win for us, that the government has come out with this up to $2,400 funding. So what this essentially means is that you could, and I quote, could potentially qualify for this $2,400 as long as you provide that your income that was lost was solely the service of the removal of a mask. So for example, you lost X amount of money in beard trims, upper lip waxing, facials, makeup, etc. So in order to qualify for that, you solely had to lose, and I want to say, I think it is $41,000 or maybe $4,100 in 2021 in that particular service in order to qualify for the grant.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's the situation there. But what you're saying is that your own specific business and others like it don't qualify specifically for this type of support based on those parameters. Can you give us a bit of an explanation as to why that's the case?
Yes. So for example, Cutting Edge Studio and Boutique, we have not lost that much of a substantial income for the trimming of beards and mustaches. Now, my friend Trudy, who owns Trudy's Nutrition and Aesthetics,
Yes.
for her, that would be a win for her because she was not able to do any facial waxing except for eyebrows. And she was not able to do facials, which is primarily her business, in the month of December and January.
So in the meantime, that leaves yourself and others who probably could have used a one-time grant of $2,500 at this point, still struggling after what's been a very difficult December, January, and the early part of February. Can you paint a picture for us as to how the most recent round of business restrictions and retail restrictions have impacted yourself at Cutting Edge Studio?
I mean, that cut our retail down to 3 people at a time in the store, which at Christmas time, when it's a mad rush and everybody's shopping and people want to get gift certificates and pop in to get a last minute gift, there's 3 people already. They don't have time to wait in line. So there's income loss there. There's also income loss in the sense that we could no longer double book and we could no longer do any services that would require to move a mask, which sounds crazy, but there's a lot of men that like to get their beards and mustaches trimmed just for Christmas. Then you go into January, and January was absolutely disastrous. And I feel it and heard it and talked to other owners across the board in our industry. Not only were we mandated, and not only did the government say you should only go to school, you should only go to work, and you should only get groceries, people took that and went into hibernation mode. I mean, you didn't have to tell them to be locked down, but people were acting like they were locked down. So nobody was coming out. You put that on top of people were totally testing positive for COVID, way more COVID cases than ever before in this pandemic. On top of salons, my salon included, got exposed. So then we had to close down. So you put all that into a pile and it's just a disaster, unfortunately. So for January, what normally is a busy time for us after Christmas. People have gift cards, people are coming in, wanting to get freshened up. We had nobody. I mean, there was days that we didn't have a single person walk through the door.
And by my count, it's one thing to say that this all happened to you and to your coworkers this past Christmas and January, but by my count, this would have been the third time in the 2 years of the pandemic thus far that there was a major lockdown or lockdown type of restrictions levied on retail businesses that directly impacted your business. So this would be another difficult stretch on top of two others that you might have just been recovering from. Can you talk a little bit about that aspect of it?
Yeah, I mean, the first one, I don't think many of us realized what the first one was going to be or what it exactly entailed. So I wasn't so stressed out because I didn't know what to expect and I didn't know what was coming. For the second one, I that day I cried because I was heartbroken that I had to close. I knew it was what I had to do. I'm all for government regulations and making sure everyone was safe, but I just knew that unfortunately this was going to be the second time that I had to close my doors, but I wanted to make sure that my staff and my customers were safe, and I knew this was the right decision. I also knew that because we had just about to start summer when we would reopen, I knew that it was going to be busier once we did reopen, and I knew it was going to be safer. This time around, the lockdown came, and I say lockdown because that's essentially what it was.
Yeah.
Their mandates came right at the worst time. I mean, December is when any business makes their most money. January is when it usually is slower. So you go from having the potential to make a huge income, and then you know that your time is going to be slowed down. So you appreciate any little business that you do have. And I feel like with these mandates in salon and spas and in little boutiques like my own, it made it so that we couldn't make as much as we used to, or that we were possibly able to, but also that it made it even slower than what slow would already have been.
Mm. So what happens now then, both in terms of the basic running of your business and trying to recover from the latest stretch, but also in terms of lobbying for more inclusive supports within the sector impact program provincially? What do you and your coworkers do from here on in?
Well, I am still totally supporting the Cosmetology Association, and they're supporting us in the sense that we're still trying to get the government to understand. The restrictions have been lifted, thank goodness. People do feel more comfortable to come out, which is a plus. And essentially, that's all I was fighting for. I wasn't necessarily looking for a handout of money, but what I did want Tim to say was that salons were safe. I mean, we use the same hospital grade cleaners as hospitals. You're not going to catch anything in a salon. And it's been like that for years. A salon is probably the most cleanest and safest place that you could be in. With that being said, you can get exposed anywhere, of course. But for the majority part, it is very sterile, very clean, very high in sanitize and disinfecting, because that's what we go to school for. That's what we learn in majority of our education, is how to keep people safe. The second part with that is I feel like people need to realize that it is a pandemic. We do have to be careful, but in the same breath, if we don't start going out and fixing these small businesses in the economy, we're not going to have any small businesses left in the economy. Personally, I'm okay. I'm going to fight, keep fighting tooth and nail. I will be here. It will take a lot to knock me down. But in the same breath, other people aren't so lucky. So for me, I was just trying to be a voice for my people, because there was so many women that were calling and saying, you know, I'm a single mom and I have no heat. I'm a single mom and I have no food to feed my kids because I'm working from home in my one chair that now I have nobody. So what the public needs to understand about our industry is when there is nobody sitting in the chair or when there is nobody lying on the bed, that service provider actually isn't making any money. So the only money made is when a service is provided. That is how the majority of us make money and get paid.
And you mentioned the personal toll this has taken on some of your colleagues within the salon and the hair care industry. What has that been like for you and for your coworkers at Cutting Edge, just as we're winding down here? What kind of an impact has this made on all of you?
Well, January for us was really tough. I mean, for the first 12 days, we only did $2,100, and that is for the boutique and the hair salon. I mean, we can do that in a day. So to do that in 12 days was absolutely crazy. My girls were worried. Of course they were worried. They, this is their income. This is their life. This is how they pay their, expenses. I was a little bit worried in the sense that I was like, okay, what's this mean? What do I got to do? But like I told them, don't worry. I got this. We got this. We'll keep doing what we need to do. And our clients have been super, super supportive. I don't know where I would be without the customers that we have. I mean, even though they couldn't actually get into the salon because maybe they had COVID, or maybe someone in their family had COVID, or maybe they weren't even comfortable, they were at least calling and saying, hey guys, we didn't forget about you. We've been stuck down here in Marguerite and it's been snowing, but as soon as it's a nice day, we're going to come. So that was nice to know that some people were still, thinking about us, even though they weren't actually visiting us.
Good to hear that kind of customer loyalty, not just from here in town, but from all the way around the region, for sure. We've covered a lot of ground in a short time, Ashley, as I expected we would. Did you want to add anything else about all of this just before we wrap up?
I just want to say that we have geared up for spring and summer. We have a lot of merchandise coming into the boutique. We are going to have a huge selection of sandals, also dresses for mothers of the groom or mothers of the bride. And I'm happy to announce that Redkin has promised us that the hair show in Toronto in October is a go. So I will actually be going and refreshing my education for the first time in 2.5 years. So we are getting back to where we need to be.
The world's slowly reopening and a brighter future ahead for you and your colleagues. And we certainly hope that's continuing to be the case. In the meantime, Ashley Taylor, thank you so much for joining us again. It's good to have you back on Telile 24/7. Thanks again.
Thanks, Adam.
Ashley Taylor is the owner and operator of Cutting Edge Studio and Boutique at the Port Hawkesbury Shopping Centre. We've been speaking to her from her home in Port Hawkesbury via Zoom. Stay tuned for more of Telile 24/7 in just a moment. And as promised, it's time to play the Fast Five once again here on Telile 24/7. Let's welcome back Dartmouth South MLA and Nova Scotia's first leadership candidate for the provincial NDP, Claudia Chender. And Claudia, are you all ready to play the Fast Five?
I guess so.
Okay, there, spoken like a champion. There we are, right on. Okay, don't worry, it's like a final exam that you can't possibly fail because it's all about you. So, here we go. First question, coffee, tea, or neither?
Both.
Both. Oh, there you go. You're super caffeinated, which is probably what a provincial party leader needs. So there we are. All right. You can binge watch one movie as many times as you want, even if you've already seen it 50 times. What is that movie?
That's a tricky one.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I haven't been to the movies much lately, but I don't know. I have 3 small kids, so probably Sting right now because I like the music.
Really?
Keeps my kids quiet.
The first one or the second one?
Either.
Okay. There we are. All right. So that's a good recommendation from you. Next question. Your dream vacation.
Oh, wow. Well, I think my dream vacation is anywhere near the water in Nova Scotia in the summertime. I think, people are always wanting to get out of here, and I look around in the summer and think, where else would I rather be? So, give me some water and, my family and some good friends and a sunset. I'm happy.
That's the dream vacation for pretty well all of us here in Nova Scotia. So
Yeah.
Good stuff. Question number 4. You can be any animal for one day. What is that animal?
Ooh. I think I don't know. I guess I'd like to be a tiger or a lion. Big cat running around in the woods and being stealthy and having that kind of view and power would be cool.
You could be the lion in the Cross of St. Andrews on the Nova Scotia flag.
Perfect.
There we are. That's perfect for a party leadership. And last question, quite simply, your happy place.
Oh, wow. My happy place. Yeah, my happy place is my home with my family. And my happy place is my community as well. I think I feel lucky every day to live in this province and in my community and to have a safe and happy family to share my life with. And so I don't wish for anything else.
That's marvelous. And of course, I have to tell you, I don't think I really need to explain, but the questions will get a lot harder for you from here on in as you run for the party leadership. So thank you for taking a couple of minutes to play the Fast Five and have a little fun with this. Thank you, Claudia Chender.
Thank you so much.
All right, no trouble. Claudia Chender is the first declared candidate for the leadership of Nova Scotia's NDP. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That wraps up this week's edition of Telile 24/7. Thanks once again for tuning in, and a big thank you to my interview guests this week, Claudia Chender, Ashley Taylor, and Karla MacFarlane. Of course, if you have any ideas or suggestions for future editions of the show, or you just want to talk about what you've seen in the past hour, feel free to get in touch with me personally or with Telile Community Television. And of course, don't forget to follow Telile Community Television on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. That's all for now. Thank you for tuning in to Telile 24/7. I look forward to seeing you again next week with a brand new show. Bye for now.